welcome to our September live stream. How it's already September, I'm unsure. We are so lucky to have Dr. Erin McNeill with us today as we dive in and just have a conversation about the science of reading. She is such an expert. I want to read her bio to you really quickly because she has strengths in so many areas and is such an asset to educators. She is a professional learning specialist for Keep Indiana Learning, which is a department of Central Indiana Educational Service Center. She has spent 16 years in the classroom as an English language arts and English as a new language teacher and coordinator, and 2 years as a member of the Literacy, Culture, and Language Education Department at Indiana University, where she trained pre-service teachers. She currently works with teachers, coaches, schools, and districts on the following: implementing the science of reading into new or existing curricula, creating asset-based and culturally responsive literacy experiences and materials, leveraging data-driven instruction to meet the needs of all students, developing small or large conference-style virtual and blended professional learning, strengthening literacy and language skills and pedagogies. And as an education researcher, Erin focuses on asset-based strategies for emergent bilinguals and prioritizes relationships with diverse students. These studies led to her current research, which studies how practitioners can use the information they learn about their students in literacy projects to build a culturally relevant curriculum based on students' experiences and interests. And I think that that pretty much sums up what we are all after. So we are so lucky to have you with us today to talk all things science of reading. If you want to go ahead and kind of add a little bit to that, talk to us a little bit more about your mission and your current role, and kind of where we are with science of reading and what you're excited about.
Yeah, thank you. I'm excited to be here. And I would just say my role at Keep Indiana Learning is, I feel like so many people are worried about the science of reading, and they've heard all of these things about the science of reading, and they think maybe it's only K2, and there's so much more reading to explore, and not just in literacy classrooms and not just in kindergarten through second grade. So really, I've spent a lot of time looking at some other features of the science of reading besides phonics and phonemic awareness, the way that comprehension works and vocabulary and fluency, and how all of these things work together to really create a wealth of knowledge. So I think the science of reading is a really misleading term because there were over 200,000 research studies that went into this. So it's really the sciences, right? We have all of these experts who have come together to look at the ways that reading can be attained for all of our students.
And I'm glad you said that about reading is not just for K to second. At the 9th to 12th grade level, teaching PLTW, we lead with research, and reading is essential. Without the reading piece, my students wouldn't learn. We're a non-traditional classroom. And so more and more, year after year, we find when we get to the end of the year, after we've done every activity, it is the reading that makes the difference in our ability to pass the national exam.
Yeah.
And then, in first grade, being that primary teacher, of course, I'm excited to learn from you today because that is my complete passion. I have a master's in reading education because I love it so much. But I also love STEM. And like you're saying, STEM is not a buzzword, just like science of reading is not a buzzword. They kind of mesh, and we can put them together and incorporate them together and learn, and we can all learn from each other and help bring that outside world into our reading environment and how it connects with our phonics and how it connects with comprehension and how it connects with vocabulary. So I'm just excited about our time together today.
I am too. And I think as I look at these pictures of these students, I think about the little girl on the right, and I do think about reading as an experience, right? And having different experiences with reading, and being able to communicate in different ways and show what you know and express vocabulary. And so I love that this is an initiative for all of us, right? We're not just saying, well, good luck, K1. You have to try to figure this out so that they become readers once they get to us. It is really all hands on deck, because we've all had students at the upper levels that really still struggle with fluency and struggle with phonics and the vocabulary piece. So I think as we move on and we look ahead to the next slide, we are going to talk about vocabulary. And so, I put this picture on the right. It was one of the PD opportunities we had. One night after school, a group of us got together for just some PLC time and really to lean on one another. And we're learning something new every time we do this. And I think that, as educators, it's our job as well to learn from each other. We want our students to learn from each other. Our job is to teach the students, but not forgetting that this is a job that we can't just do by ourselves. And we need each other. And that's why we're so glad to have you on today, because none of us would say we're an expert in this area, but we want to learn more about it so that we can be better for our students and be better for each other. So Dayna, talk to us about what's going on with your students in the first picture.
Well, if you look in the middle where the circle is, I think it's so great because we were doing the UG family. And what I like to do is you can bring STEM in to help with that vocabulary piece and that understanding. And also it connects students to real life reasons why they are studying that phoneme or they're studying that chunk. So like if we were doing the UG family, so we studied bugs. And so we studied them, we read about bugs, we learned about the different parts of an insect and how it's different from a spider, and we compared and contrast those body parts and how they're alike and different. And then they were given materials and they had to show what they learned and make their own insect using Play-Doh, pipe cleaners, different cardboard so they can make wings, that kind of thing, and kind of label those body parts and show what they learned also based on that vocabulary. But I agree with you that it is so important, Karisa, for us to connect not only with educators, but also take educators within your corporation, outside your corporation, that can come in and connect with your kids. So on the left, we have Elaine's host of students in the high school connecting with our students in first grade. We were reading a story called Click, Clack, Click, and it's about these students who go to a community center and they invent their own instruments because they don't have a lot of money and that kind of thing. And so Elaine's students came over. They brought some of their instruments that they play in the orchestra. They taught us the different parts of the orchestra or the instrument, how the strings work, how the bow works with the strings, how the sound comes out. We did sound experiments, and then they helped our students create their own instruments. And then we had a junk jam. So not only can you can connect with people in the district or outside your district, but you also can connect with the students, different ages, to help your students to learn and grow and figure out vocabulary.
Yeah, and mine there in the middle and the top, vocabulary is a challenge in science. It's hard, different words, difficult to pronounce words. We'll talk about that later. But my kids there, this was last week, I think, we're doing an old-fashioned card sort. And I like doing vocabulary things where they touch and they move things. I do a lot of activities very similar to what Dayna does when it comes to touch this or build this. And so, Dr. McNeill, I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on vocabulary and how we can build these connections in our brain in a way better than a worksheet or just writing out words?
Well, I think the fact that you're having kids really build and think about this and use the parts. So Dr. Freddie Hebert, she's famous for vocabulary, and she says that it should be generative so that kids understand the parts, right? So if we're putting together parts and the patterns that underline all words, so even, using the UG sound or using the cards where you're putting together and looking at how different words fit together, that's really a great way to learn to extend those same rules to other words. So you can extend the knowledge you've gotten from these word parts and the patterns and how they work together and the sounds they make. So that's really a great idea. Also, I've always noticed in the STEM courses that you do a great job of finding vocabulary words that tell us what's going to happen in the text. I think in English language arts, we don't do a good job. We pick the hard words. We're like, these are hard words, so we need to talk about these, instead of trying to find themes and centering around looking at those patterns of words and how they all connect to a specific theme.
I like that. I had never thought about that. So when we go to phonics, it's funny, when we started this discussion, as a high school teacher, I was like, okay, well, yeah, we build vocabulary. And I kind of had to ask Dayna, hey, isn't phonics how you like sound out words and put the sounds together? And then as we started to talk about it, this, like, I do this all the time, I didn't even know it, using stems, right? I always joke with the kids that, you never learn these stems, but I'm going to be your stems teacher today. And so the right-hand picture, we're working with our mannequins and learning body parts. And even today, it's adduction and abduction. And what do those pieces mean? What does epi mean versus endo? And so it's actually, I didn't know I was a phonics teacher, but anytime, any way that we can tie those stems in a science classroom gives us a huge leg up, because even if we come across words, because it's happened my whole career, you come across words that you're like, I don't even know what that is. But if it's got a piece of a word I know, I have got a way to kind of work my way into, what's this really about? It says hypo, that must mean it's low. And so so that's what we've been working on. We work on a lot in both of my biomed classes, but especially as we're learning body parts and trying to put together words that are full of syllables that seem to not go right together. That phonics piece becomes huge for us.
Yeah, and I love what you said about the stems, because we don't realize as we teach older kids that we are teaching phonics and helping with spelling as well, learning how to spell words. I mean, if you can spell those stems, sometimes that's half of the word or more to be able to spell and put it together. These students up at the kind of middle top, they were communicating, they were doing a coding activity and had to give really great directions to each other to be able to replicate the drawing on each side and talk about the vocabulary that was involved. And just another way to communicate, right? They were not writing down directions specifically on a paper. They had to give verbal directions, and they couldn't look at what the other person was doing to make sure that they were doing it correctly. So I just think about that. I think about what we're doing every day, and educators aren't even realizing that all of these things go together to help students become better learners, better readers, better comprehenders, more fluent. So giving credit to educators for what we're already doing and realizing that we're already doing really great stuff. Let's fine tune some of the stuff we're doing, and let's notice when we're doing these things and really be, kind of cheering each other on and stealing each other's ideas and implementing these same things in the classroom.
I have a question for Dr. McNeill before we move on. Is something that when I was reintroduced to the science of reading this past summer, I was thinking, how is this really different than good teaching? I was trying to figure out how different. What do you think, Dr. McNeill? Is this any different really than what, a good teacher would be doing in their classroom already? What do you see as maybe the similarities or differences than in the past?
Well, I think just being aware of that there are specific parts of reading and that they build on each other. So if we think about the way the brain works when we're reading, we see a word and it goes to one of two pathways. So we're either decoding it, which means we're using phonics, and that's all the way up. I mean, just like we were talking about in the biomed classes, they're doing that every day, right? We're using, we don't know the new word. And so we're figuring out how to pronounce that. And so we're either going down that path or we're going down the other path, which we know the word, we're making connections, and we know what it means. And so we're able to pronounce it correctly and figure out the context. So I don't know that it's necessarily different. I think it's just being aware of this is what we know about the brain, and this is what we know about the way we learn to read. And we just need to continue to incorporate these key components, phonics included, even in the higher grades when necessary.
I totally agree. I think it's being more aware and being intentional, right? So, when we're working on short O, our book says, okay, this is your short O week, that kind of thing. And I think that we can draw in so many other things to make those connections as well and make it real for them. And then that way, once it's introduced, and we can keep being intentional and making sure that that is part of the things that come through as we go through other text. And one of my students here, we're doing the Ock family. So we were studying rocks, and we were checking out different things about rocks and using those tools and bringing that science in that is recommended through our science curriculum into our reading with the Ock family. And then other students, we just had Pirate Day in first grade, and we were working on that R sound, and our students were going on treasure hunts and testing ships to see if they could hold cargo, but bringing in that STEM into it, as well as helping them understand how to break down words and sound them out and decode them. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. And, I really feel like, I don't know, I mean, I'm sure the science is there behind it, but for me, I teach like a learner that I am. I'm very, very visual. And so as we're building, even learning stems and the phonics or the vocabulary, I'm trying to build those in the kids in a way that is very visual, right? And so, Dayna, you do that by what you wear to school. It all starts right there, right? You're building a visual memory for them of having that frog day. I'm sure you were full frog. But kind of the same thing, the kids, they kind of laugh at me, but we were talking about flexors and extensors last week. And I was like, the bodybuilders, they can't both flex their bicep and their tricep. And so I was posing for them. Of course, they were dying. I was like, I know my muscles are huge, but they'll never forget it because we built that connection in the vocabulary and in the phonics of what does it mean. And so I think the memories, like your frogs there, make me think of that. And even your bugs on the last one, they're not going to forget it because it's built with a different type of memory in their brain.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. So comprehension. I'm not sure. Is this you, Karisa?
Yeah, I can talk first and throw it to Dayna. I just, learning coming full circle. When we talk about STEM integration, it's everything, right? It is that literacy piece as well. And when you can go from start to finish with this learning experience, and this little boy that's in this park ranger outfit, I mean, it started with researching some national parks and meeting a park ranger virtually and going on a nature hike and creating a nature journal and writing about what he saw and the vocabulary that was involved with some of the things he saw that he didn't know the names of. So we, used the scanner on the phone to figure out different rocks he found and to figure out the bird that he saw. Just when learning like that comes full circle. And he made a comment like, this outfit was like $25, but it was well worth it. And I'm like, hey, wear it for Halloween. Be a park ranger for Halloween. That has to be the best part of what teaching's all about. When start to finish, you don't even anticipate how amazing it's going to be and what their takeaways are going to be and how it will impact them like forever. There's still kids inviting Dayna to their senior night. From first grade to 12th grade, they're inviting her to senior night. And I'm sure it's because they have these memories, like Elaine said, of my teacher being herself and, encouraging us to be ourselves and coming to school dressed up and teaching me how to read and making those connections. And so we don't even know the impact that one of these lessons is going to have on these kids forever.
And I love that you said that, because thank you, by the way. But what I love too is, you are so good about always teaching that empathy, and they are connecting and it's changing their lives, but they then also draw empathy from their reading, and they're making connections to how that affects other people. Like maybe they're like connecting to the story and they're thinking, oh my goodness, someone is dealing with this, or I know people in our community that are dealing with this. And when we pull in that empathy and we're having students go through ways to solve those problems in our stories, and then they're engineering ways to solve those problems in real life and connecting it to things in their community, that's giving our students so much more a meaning than a who, what, why, when, where question.
Yeah.
Right? Who, what, why, when, where questions are great for comprehension, but when we dig deeper than that and help them connect to real world situations and bring STEM into it, then we're helping them to understand our world rather than who is just in a story. Also, connecting to our world, we read a story about maps, and it was creating a map. And so instead of having just each student create a map of their own, each student was given a job that's like a real job in the world in my room. So there was civil engineers, there were sign creators, there was people who worked on roads. We watched video clips on each one of those jobs and what those jobs really entail, and gave understanding to that. And then each person was given the items they needed to do their part on the map. Like someone was given the things to make the signs, obviously, and someone had to pre-create the roads on the map before they could hand it off to the sign maker. And then someone who was the person who was in charge of parks had to create all of the park benches on the map and the trees and color the grass. So each person had a role, and then they worked together to collaborate to make a map that to show that comprehension of what they gained from our story this past week.
It's really cool. Yeah, mine on the right, the kids are modeling DNA. There's so many concepts in the biological world that they can't visualize, that they can't see. And so we talk about these chemicals that they use to build the DNA that's going to be the map of them, and it's gone. So, we're very fortunate to have really neat models. Obviously, you can model DNA using candy or using, stop motion. I've seen a lot of different ways to do it. But one of the wonderful things about STEM and the STEM classroom is those challenging comprehension pieces. We can model them, just like making the map, right? Or having the adventure. And so I really, Dr. McNeill, I'm curious what you say, what you think thoughts are on comprehension for us in the high school with pretty much our high stakes test is now the SAT, right? Half of their measurement is math and half of it is comprehension. And so I'm just wondering your thoughts on that piece.
Well, the one thing I love about all these projects here is that they are all project based. So if we're thinking about comprehension and the ability to comprehend, so first we're decoding, and then we're making connections, and then we're thinking deeply. So it's really 3 parts. And I was driving down the road one day and listening to a podcast. Lester Laminack, I think he's a retired professor now, but he said, too often we measure comprehension by the ability to answer someone else's questions. And I felt really attacked. And I thought, oh my goodness, I have been asking other people's questions to measure, right? And so I started to look into some other ways. What is effective comprehension, and how do we effectively do that? And really the best way that research shows is that we're doing project-based learning. So we're giving our students a purpose, right? So we're not just saying, read this. We're saying, at the end of this, you are going to create a map, or you are going to go be in nature, or do this model. So we're giving students a reason to read the text, instead of just saying, we want you to read this, and then we're going to ask you a bunch of questions that we've come up with beforehand. the book Artfully Teaching the Science of Reading really goes into some deep ways to look at purposes for reading and look at project-based learning as the purpose. And, if you think about reading a text or an article, if you're reading it for entertainment, it's one thing, and you probably don't retain that knowledge. But if you're reading it to give a presentation or create an argument or a model of some sort, you pay a little more attention. It's a little different.
Yeah, you make my heart sing about the project based.
Well, and purpose, right? We all, even as adults, right? We go into a meeting, we want to make sure it's going to be worth our time. We need to know the purpose, what the takeaways are going to be. Kids are the same way. They're not much different than us. And when they have purpose and meaning and feel like they're a part of maybe a solution or making a difference.
Yes.
I think that's huge. I love what you just said. I wrote down the title of that book.
I did too. And choice in what they're learning and giving them choice. And I love the idea of, because as adults, right, we read to learn about something we're doing or something we're interested in. And I think that's where we lose them. We don't give them that opportunity to spiral it to something that matters to them. And I tell mine all the time. I say, I wish I could grade you like Dayna gets to grade hers, right? I wish I could just look at my kids and be like, let's talk about it. You tell me about this thing. And then I could just say, you're a 3. You got it. Let's go on, take it to the next level. Unfortunately, you're right. We are grading them with these high stakes tests with other people's questions. Mm-hmm. And, really in the real world, that's not how it works. And those of us teachers, we don't like to have to we want to go and explore with our kids.
And you know what? So many of my lower students, as you go to the next slide, Elaine, so many of my lower students, they have a hard time writing down the answers to those questions. But yet, if they can creatively connect and show you their understanding, their projects are going to far exceed my highest student. It's just they dive right into that, and it meets the interests of theirs, and then I can still see how they understood what they read.
Yeah, and I put in the middle, I put a clip. I just took a snapshot of some videos that my first year biomed did last week in Flip. And again, fluency was not something I thought about till we started to prep for this, and it dawned on me that these projects they produce for me, whether it is using a video or they're giving a live presentation, they have to show fluency. So Flip has got this new teleprompter piece in it that just makes their work just exquisite. So they learn how to write a good script in a teleprompter, and then they have to be able to read it. And you can really tell on the videos where they stumble over words, or, I'll tell them, listen, let's practice the word several times before you go through it. But it is a big difference having fluency in your reading. I also love, and Dayna and Karisa know, my multi-language learners, many of them are very gun shy when we start in presenting to the class. And that's a skill that they really need. And so using something like Flip kind of takes the anxiety of everybody's watching me out. And to see my language learners as they progress through the year, it is unbelievable as students become more fluent in their speaking and in their reading, how all of they just grow into it, and then they have self-confidence, and they say, maybe I can go to HOSA to state and give a speech to a group of strangers. And so I hadn't thought about fluency till this, but it is a big piece of what I think we do in every classroom. Again, I think we have stuck in our brains, this is what Dayna does when they read out loud, right? And we only just read in circles. And that's not actually what fluency is at all. Karisa?
Right. And I love what Dayna said, giving all students multiple chances and multiple avenues to prove what they know, right? So the written response is hard, then let's let them get in front of a camera and film their response, or just talk to you about it, or present in some really unique way. Mm-hmm. A thank you video, being able to say thank you and put words together, and like a real life skill to be able to present. I mean, to get this digital learning coach job with Keep Indiana Learning, I had to present on Flip. I had to talk, and I had talking points, and it's a real life skill. There are plenty of jobs out there that are requiring a video submission as well as writing. And I appreciate that, because not everybody writes as well, but usually you can tell a lot about someone as they're presenting or being able to speak professionally. So I think, we're preparing kids for the real world as young as kindergartners to be working on these skills. And I just love for all learners, right? All learners have these exceptionalities, and being able to give them an opportunity, to have some choice and voice in their learning. I mean, look at these smiles, look at the investigation. Everyone is invested in their learning when STEM is really just, in the center of everything that you're doing. The investment's huge. And I can't say enough about that. And I love the point about fluency and how it's not just, someone reading from a story and getting marked down on all the words that they miss in first grade. It extends, into the professional field. The number of times I feel like I'm presenting and kind of tripping on my words, and we're all a work in progress when it comes to fluency, for sure.
And I love that. Flip is a form of comprehension as well, like you're showing and showcasing what you've gained from a read or whatnot. But something I think we've discussed before is once your students know how to use Flip, they could even take a passage and read it on Flip to help build that fluency, because they're continuing to practice, then see themselves replay it, see themselves reading and think, oh my goodness, I could build on this a different way. And I was just thinking about how background knowledge is kind of what my first picture is all about, is like building that background knowledge on chunks of words or different kinds of words helps build that fluency when they go to read, because they can maybe even guess a little bit as they're reading to help build that fluency up, because they've got that background knowledge, so then they can continue to read more like a rolling ball. What are some of your ideas to help build that fluency, Dr. McNeill?
Well, I think the technology piece is huge. As you're talking about Flip, that when I was teaching English learners, the easiest way to get them to practice was to have them record themselves, because they listened back and didn't like the way it sounded, so they would do it again. And the same thing with giving presentations or being in front of an audience. We need those authentic activities where people are interested in practicing and getting it right and listening to themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and my this year the PLTW changed the second year biomed, and we're coming from an approach of we work in a certain type of facility. So right now we're working at physical therapist office, and so what I've started doing is I've been using Flip. We have a set of patients that are recurring, and I'm having my kids make me a 45-second Flip update. But you are the physical therapist. I need it to be professional. You're leaving a message for the doctor as to where they're at. And so we're building those skills that they'll take to career to be able to speak concise, no ums and having a plan as they go about it. And it is amazing how well they turn out. We've talked a lot. We don't have enough time in the day to finish everything. And so using technology to help us build some of these other tools like vocabulary and fluency, we can go back and then watch them later and assess them. Whereas there's not enough time for me to ask all 30 some in my room. Now you tell me about your patient and you tell me about your patient. And so I just feel like tech helps us build so much into our room that we can assess multifaceted.
So I know we're already over on our time. This is how it usually goes. So we'll wrap up here at the end kind of quickly, but some takeaways, some things that we talked about that I think are so true of the STEM and literacy world, these meaningful experiences, right? Exposing students to as much as possible, learning right alongside them, being able to admit, I don't know the answer to that either. Let's learn about this together. Connecting with others, finding your PLC groups, inviting people in to share with you, because we all have these special skill sets to share with other people, offering multiple ways to demonstrate masteries for students and for them to communicate their work, and helping them understand the why, so that they understand why they're learning what they're learning. The fact that STEM and literacy go hand in hand, and building in that time for choice reading at school and at home, making it a priority. Instead of sending home 10 worksheets for homework, making reading a priority, because I promise when those worksheets stop going home and the students build their stamina, they are going to pick up their book and they're going to be excited about it. And they're going to share pictures of themselves reading in unique places. And they're going to say, look, Mrs. Schwennekamp, I got to page 20 last night. This book is so good. But we have to be deliberate about that. And we have to, that's a whole other stream. But getting rid of some of this homework that doesn't have a purpose, like really stepping back and saying, what is the purpose of this? Finding the experts like Dr. McNeill and others in your community and beyond, right? We have this great platform to communicate virtually with others. I don't have to fly to go see someone. Someone doesn't have to come here. We can meet virtually and share our expertise. And then really just what we always say, finding ways to bring joy to learning and teaching through our own passions, through the students' passions, and letting that really guide what you do in the classroom.
Well, we are so thankful to Dr. McNeill for being here today. And in October, we're going to be with the Lit Gals, and we're going to be talking about Yay for Lit and Grit. So we're really excited about that, and how literacy can be pushed a little bit and challenge us. So we're looking forward to that. And then we have several live streams coming up. In November, we have the opportunity as YaySTEM to present at HEC again. This is the Hoosier Educational Computer Conference downtown, and it is such a great conference to go to learn how to bring that technology into your reading and showcase comprehension and the science of reading through technology. So, and also learn other ways to house technology in your classroom.
Yes, and last year you can find us on our YouTube channel through Keep Indiana Learning, all of our season 1 broadcasts, but you can also go to the Indiana Learning Lab and earn some professional growth points. It's actually quite a lot of points. You get almost all your points watching us, so we encourage you to do that. You can use the QR code to locate those. And then we always want feedback. We love getting feedback, so we know we want to keep our live streams and our presentations, and when we go out to these places, we want to keep them relevant. We want to talk about what people care about, and we want to make sure that we're bringing what you need to your classroom in a beneficial way. And then finally, if you want to reach out to any of us, the QR codes will give you our personal emails at school and information from each of us. You can also find us on Instagram and Twitter. And I know, Dr. McNeill, if you have some parting words as we finish up today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me as a guest. It was great to listen to what you're doing in your classrooms and see the connections between STEM and literacy.
And please check out Dr. McNeill. She's got a 6-part webinar series. She has many blog posts on Keep Indiana Learning. Lots of great knowledge to share. And she's obviously very willing to share with others and to collaborate. So we want to thank you again for being here and thank people for watching. And obviously always reach out to us if there's anything that we can do to help you with anything you're working on in the classroom.
YaySTEM!
YaySTEM!